Imagine that you could somehow look into the future and see how everything turns out. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Would you enjoy life, or would you feel like you were an actor acting out the rest of your life? Isn't part of what makes relationships genuine the fact that we don't know what other people will decide, and other people don't know what we will decide? Doesn't it make more sense to assume that the future is not settled and that our choices have a genuine impact on how the future unfolds? For example, how I treat my wife will determine how she acts towards me and how successful our marriage will be. That is just one example that shows how what I decide affects what the future will be. The future is not set in stone because relationships are real, both our relationship with God and with each other. The classical views of God's relationship to time and the future deny that genuine relationships can exist. If God has determined the future as settled, then doesn't that mean that God has made our decisions for us? Or if God simply foreknows the future as settled, doesn't that mean that God is essentially locked into a static existence, disabling him from engaging in a genuine relationship with us? Well, according to this week's Torah portion, Vayera, the future is not certain. And in fact, we can cause God to change his mind regarding his plans, and God has to wait until we've made choices to truly find out what we feel about him. In Genesis 18 verses 20 to 21, God shares with Abraham his intention to judge Sodom and Gomorrah. He said, "The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know." Notice that God had to assess the situation, and this is because the future is not set in stone. If Sodom and Gomorrah would have repented from their sin, God would have spared them, like he did Nineveh in the book of Jonah. Also, if someone were to attempt to intercede on their behalf, that too could change God's mind regarding bringing destruction on Sodom and Gomorrah. Indeed, beginning in verse 22, Abraham attempts to persuade God to change his mind, making the point that God shouldn't sweep away the righteous with the wicked. Abraham sought to find out how few righteous people there had to be in order for God to spare Sodom and Gomorrah. God agreed that he wouldn't destroy them for the sake of 10 righteous people. While 10 righteous people could not be found, and Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed with the exception of Lot and his family, the point is that Abraham and God engaged in a real conversation which genuinely affected the future. If God had already predetermined what was to happen, or knew it as settled already, then the whole conversation was a charade. God could have saved Abraham's time and told Abraham that his judgment was set in stone. However, like Nineveh, there was a real possibility that Sodom and Gomorrah could have been saved. Genesis 22 contains the story of the binding of Isaac. Usually the story is interpreted in such a way that the point of Abraham's test was to demonstrate to Abraham his own level of faithfulness and devotion to God. While the test certainly caused Abraham to examine himself and see what his limits were, the text indicates that the test was for God, so he could see whether or not Abraham truly feared him. As Abraham was about to offer up Isaac, God said in Genesis 22:12, "Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Abraham was going to go through with it. As the writer to the Hebrews said, Abraham considered that God is able to raise people even from the dead. So, Abraham figured that either God would stop him or raise Isaac from the dead. Abraham indeed trusted God. This story makes no sense if God determined the future or knew it as settled. In fact, to put Abraham through such an extreme situation, even though God already knew the outcome, is cruel. But if God genuinely didn't know what Abraham would choose, then this was the extreme God had to go to in order to truly know if Abraham trusted him. Our relationship with God is real, and the future we live out with him is not set in stone, because it is up to all of us to choose what the future will be. For more videos, click on the subscribe link above or visit youtube.com/messianicniagara and click on the subscribe link there. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/messianicniagara, and visit our website at messianicniagara.com.